They start to get resentful that you're the writer, that you're the front man, because you become more and more important because you're the songwriter.
I'm the singer, I'm the songwriter, and I'd had many years of experience as a songwriter.
I can tell you that fame and fortune did not change Sting.
In 2025, Sting suddenly found himself dragged back into a battle with his former police bandmates, Andy Summers and Stewart Copeland. More than 4 decades after their split, the two launched a fresh lawsuit against the singer, pulling one of rock's most iconic bands back into the spotlight for reasons no one expected. Fans wondered what could spark such a clash so many years later, and the music world braced for answers. But when Sting was finally asked about it, his reaction left people stunned. In August 2025, headlines erupted. Andy Summers and Stewart Copeland were suing their former frontman Sting for missing royalties. Filed in the London High Court, the case was officially logged under General Commercial Contracts and Arrangements, but that bland legal phrase hides an explosive story. According to reports from People and the Los Angeles Times, Summers and Copeland argue that Sting's company, Magnetic Publishing Ltd., has withheld payments tied to the police's catalog, especially for Every Breath You Take. They claim the original contracts failed to reflect their creative input, and that later agreements didn't fairly compensate them for decades of use across radio, television, film, and, most significantly, streaming platforms. The timing is also important. Lawsuits like this don't just appear overnight. Lawyers comb through old agreements, cross-reference with modern usage, and try to find legal footing for claims that might stretch back decades. The fact that this landed in 2025 suggests that either something new was discovered in accounting or the financial stakes simply became too big to ignore. From the outside, it looks like the unhealed wounds of the 1980s have been ripped open again. A band that broke up at its peak is now back in the headlines, not for a reunion, but for a bitter clash over who deserves to profit from their greatest hit. And that hit is at the heart of everything. Released in May 1983 on Synchronicity, Every Breath You Take became the Police's defining moment. It wasn't just a hit, it was the hit of 1983. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 8 weeks, won Grammy Awards, and went on to become one of the most played songs in radio history. By the mid-2000s, it was estimated to be played on the radio once every 3 minutes somewhere in the world. Financially, it's a goldmine. Music Business Worldwide reported that Sting personally earns about £550,000 per year in royalties from this single track. Multiply that by 40 years, plus the future revenue from streaming and licensing, and you're talking tens of millions of pounds tied to just one song. The song also gained new life when Puff Daddy, now Diddy, sampled it in 1997 for I'll Be Missing You, a tribute to the Notorious B.I.G. That version won a Grammy and introduced a new generation to Sting's melody, further cementing its value. But here's the catch. Legally, Sting has always been credited as the sole songwriter, which means every royalty, every publishing dollar flows through his company. For Summers and Copeland, that credit line is the sore spot. Because while Sting may have written the lyrics and chords, the song's most iconic element wasn't his creation. Ask anyone what they remember about Every Breath You Take. Most will hum Sting's vocal melody, but many will just as quickly recall the chiming, atmospheric guitar riff that defines the song's mood. That riff belongs to Andy Summers. In interviews, Summers has explained that Sting's demo of the song was skeletal, a straightforward vocal with simple chords. It wasn't until he layered that hypnotic, arpeggiated guitar line over Sting's framework that the song transformed into the haunting ballad we know today. Summers himself has said, "Instead of just strumming some really stupid chords, I made something out of it." That's the crux of his claim. He argues that his contribution wasn't just arrangement, it was authorship. The riff isn't background decoration, it is the song's atmosphere. Without it, Sting's demo might never have become a timeless classic. Copeland, meanwhile, points to his intricate drumming and rhythmic structure as being equally vital. He's long said that his role in shaping the Police's sound was far beyond just keeping time. Together, they argue their input should qualify as songwriting, not just performance. In the world of music publishing, that distinction is everything. Songwriting equals royalties. Performance equals nothing once the session ends. Summers and Copeland are trying to rewrite that line, and the courts may have to decide if they're right. Sting isn't staying silent. Through his lawyers, he points to a 2016 agreement between all three band members. That contract, according to Consequence of Sound, was designed to settle prior disputes over royalties and usage. Sting's team insists it clearly laid out what Summers and Copeland were owed, and that they've been fairly compensated, perhaps even overpaid, under those terms. The argument is that Summers and Copeland weren't shut out, but were instead treated as arrangers and performers, not co-writers. In their words, the lawsuit is an illegitimate attempt to revisit issues already resolved nearly a decade ago. From Sting's perspective, this isn't just about royalties. It's about defending his legacy as the sole writer of Every Breath You Take. Songwriting credit isn't only financial, it's historical. To give up even part of that credit would mean admitting that his most iconic song was in fact a group effort. That strikes at the heart of how Sting has always presented himself, the primary songwriter, the creative force behind the Police. His defense is about protecting both the money and the mythology. If you enjoy videos about the Police and would like to stay updated on the news of this lawsuit, ensure to like and subscribe, as it would be greatly appreciated.
Why fight so hard over one song? Because the stakes are enormous. Take the numbers £550,000 per year in royalties just for Sting's cut of Every Breath You Take. Add decades of radio airplay, sync licensing for film and TV, and covers. Then add streaming revenue, which continues to grow as the song finds younger listeners on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. It's not unrealistic to say that this single track has earned over £20 million for Sting across 4 decades. Now multiply that by legal damages. Summers and Copeland are reportedly seeking millions in unpaid royalties. That could mean back pay dating all the way to the 1980s, plus a new share of future royalties. And there's another layer. In 2022, Sting sold his entire songwriting catalog to Universal Music Publishing for an estimated $300 million. That deal included Police songs. If Summers and Copeland succeed in court, it could potentially affect that sale, raising questions about whether Universal actually bought all the rights it thought it did. That's the kind of financial ripple that gives corporations nightmares. So while at first glance this looks like a personal feud between ex-bandmates, the truth is bigger. This is a battle involving millions of pounds, multinational corporations, and the legacy of one of the most valuable catalogs in rock history. For fans, this lawsuit feels like déjà vu. Tension within the Police has been a story since the early 1980s. Sting, Summers, and Copeland were never shy about clashing in the studio. Recording sessions for Synchronicity were famously hostile, with members sometimes recording in separate rooms to avoid fights. Copeland once described the atmosphere as toxic but productive. The breakup in 1984 was inevitable. Sting wanted a solo career where he controlled every detail. Summers and Copeland, despite their talents, were often seen as supporting players. When the Police reunited in 2007 for a world tour, fans hoped old wounds had healed. But even then, interviews revealed cracks. Copeland called Sting insufferable in one candid moment, while Summers hinted that unresolved issues lingered. The lawsuit suggests those wounds never closed. It's not just about money, it's about decades of feeling sidelined. Summers has long argued that his guitar work was central to the Police's sound. Copeland has said he never received full credit for his rhythmic innovations. This history matters. because it shows the lawsuit isn't random. It's the culmination of 40 years of simmering resentment, and it proves that even the most successful bands aren't immune to the same conflicts as any workplace. Who gets credit, who gets paid, and who gets remembered. So what happens now? The case could drag on for years or end in a quick settlement if the financial risk becomes too high. If Summers and Copeland win, they might finally be credited as co-writers of Every Breath You Take. That would shift future royalties and possibly trigger massive back payments. A ruling in their favor could also set precedent. Other legacy bands with similar disputes might suddenly revisit old contracts. Think of all the famous riffs, drum parts, or arrangements that define songs but were never credited. If Summers and Copeland succeed, the floodgates could open. On the other hand, Sting has strong legal footing. The 2016 agreement may prove ironclad. Courts generally hesitate to overturn settled contracts, especially when decades have passed. If that's the case, Summers and Copeland may walk away empty-handed, reinforcing Sting's status as the sole author. The most likely scenario, a confidential settlement. Sting protects his reputation, Summers and Copeland get a payout, and the case disappears from headlines. But until then, fans and legal experts alike are watching closely, because the court isn't just deciding money, it's deciding the meaning of authorship in popular music.